All right, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Schilling with this week's Wednesday Wellness Minutes, coming to you live from our beloved home here in Sequoia Health. This week we're going to talk about how stress is dragging you down, okay? Obviously there's no shortage of stress in the world right now. There's no shortage of stress in a lot of people's minds, a lot of fear, a lot of unknowns that people are scared of, and things like that. So the three main areas, not to keep you waiting too long, the three main areas of stress in your life are structural, your physical body, your biochemical, which is your biochemistry, your hormones, your digestive system, your everything else in your body, and then of course the neuroemotional systems. Now, at this point in our lives, or in anybody's life, you have to say to yourself, do I want to manage my stress or do I want to get rid of it? Ultimately, if you want to expend your vital energy, your life force into managing stress, I mean, by all means, be my guest. I have decided for myself and everyone that comes to Sequoia Health that they've decided they don't want to deal with their stress, they want to get rid of it. So I feel very fortunate to have a skill set that provides a tool in each one of these areas that says I can handle someone's physical stress, their biochemical stress, and their neuroemotional stresses. Other things obviously can be useful. Certainly this does not have the solution for every under the sun, but when you have an understanding of all three areas of your body and your life, there are no more mysteries in healthcare. When you understand the biochemical, the emotional, neuroemotional, and then the structural, you can help someone in every aspect of life, because unless you have a significant trauma on the outside of your body, the body is breaking down on the inside before the outside. That's always a good rule of thumb. So, stress plays a role in your overall health. And ultimately, if your stress is unattended to, if it's left lingering for a long period of time, you're going to suffer. There's just no question. Stress plays a root cause in every single disease process that is known to man. And if you ignore it, it's like the old saying, if you ignore your health, it will go away. Just like if you ignore your rights, they will be taken away. So let's start first and foremost with structural. When you have a body challenge that's not working out, okay? Let's just say you have, your big toe starts hurting, someone might say, well, I have gout. Well, you don't really have gout. You have a big toe issue and some inflammation there. From a QNRT neuroemotional side of things, you can tie them all together and say, well, what is something you want to kick out of your life? What is something you no longer want to tolerate and kick out of your life? But you could have an ankle, lack of balance. You could have a knee, inability to move forward, uncertainty. You could have a hip, which is bearing someone else's stress or unable to bear it. You can go to the torso, unable to break through, unable to get through something. Neck, inability to understand something, criticism, stubbornness you're dealing with. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so in the absence of trauma and in the absence of some type of massive, disease process in your joint or something like that, it's coming from your brain first and foremost. So pretty much every stress you can find in your body, you can trace it back up to your brain, because your brain controls every cell in your body. So if someone comes in and they have an inability to bend or twist or move, or they can't do a certain thing, what I do as a clinician, I say, okay, I want to actually move you in that position, put you in that position, move you in that range of motion to see what is limiting you, and then we do a treatment and we go back and test it. Because like a traditional chiropractor, most of us have learned how to adjust. In fact, I don't think you can't graduate school if you don't know how to adjust, for that matter. But ultimately, you need to know how to address the body. And if you understand that if I adjust your joint, I'm going to adjust your joint. And your joint is being held in place by muscles. And your muscles are being told what to do, rather, by your brain. So you might consider it wise to work with someone who addresses your brain first and then your joint secondarily. Because, again, in the absence of trauma, your joint's not the problem. There's some type of stress, whether it's an organ system, an energy pathway. It could be a neuroemotional stress. It could be something along there that's affecting that. But you need to be able to look at it from a 35,000-foot view and say, okay, what are the different moving pieces? What's upstream? What's downstream? Now, when you think about a structural challenge, a structural stress, in the absence of trauma, what you want to do is consider, okay, what can I do that's pain-free? Because pain is not good. Pain is your brain telling you to stop. Pain is perception in the brain that says this joint or this muscle or whatever it is, it hurts. And we don't want you to do that, so it's telling you to stop. So don't ever try to work through pain. It's a terrible idea, okay? I know I've tried to do it at some points in my life, but it didn't ever work out well. So don't try to work through pain. Understand your pain is your body's warning system saying don't do that. If it's achy or sore or something like that, you can try to work through that. That's fine. That's completely acceptable. Within the first 72 hours of an actual injury, let's say you injured yourself playing a sport or gardening or doing something in life. You can do an alternating 10 minutes, so do cool down for 10 minutes and warm up for 10 minutes. You don't want to do any more than that within an hour. And you do that every hour as long as you're awake. You don't wake up to do it, but that's a great way to handle an injury, an acute injury that you might suffer. That's a great way to handle something like that. You don't want to stretch per se. You don't want to do static stretching and hold your leg out or hold your arm up or whatever it is and say, I'm going to hold this here and make it longer. Because ultimately when you stretch something statically, you're going to tear muscle fibers. And you don't necessarily want to do that. You do more like ballistic stretching or hyperbolic stretching and stuff like that. PNF stretching is a way. You can look up PNF stretching. It's where you push and release, push and release. It's a really great way to release things. So that's a great way you can combat the stress in your physical body. Understand, again, if you haven't had a trauma and you have an injury, your body's broken down on the inside. So you want to take an understanding and say, okay, is it something I'm eating? Is it something I'm drinking? Is it something I'm breathing? Is it something I'm thinking? Zig Ziglar used to, thank you so much. Zig Ziglar used to say a lot of, you're stinking thinking, right? Most of us need a checkup from the neck up, as he would say. And when you can understand that, you can understand that when you can address your stress, your body will work just fine. So, next, let's talk about neurological stresses. No, let's actually say that they're best. We talked about that a little bit already. Biochemical. So, biochemical can be your bowels, that's the lower digestive system. It can be your upper bowel, which is your small intestine. It could be your stomach. It could be your liver, your kidneys, brain function, hormone systems. I mean, there's a list that goes on and on. You want to understand the interplay. Like if you're constantly dumping carbs into your system, you're constantly jacking up your insulin, and then your body says, whoa, that excess sugar is toxic to our brain and our body. We got to pull that out. So you're going to get this massive insulin spike. And then when your body does that, it says, okay, we're like on red alert. I think of it as like your nervous system goes into high alert, and it says, okay, all excess sugars are bad. We want to get them out of the system. So if you have a big dose of sugar or some type of refined carb or something like that in the morning, like an easy digestible cereal, like a rice bran or something like that. Well, rice bran is probably a bad example, but like Lucky Charms and Cocoa Puffs, stuff like that. Or if you have toast, pancakes or something like that that's easily absorbed in your body, you're going to spike your insulin. And that's going to leave your system inflamed and on high alert because it says we got to get that out of the system. So your entire day is going to be spent with part of your immune system being focused on getting excess sugars out of your diet, out of your system. And so when you get more in there, it's going to say, oh, get those out of there, store them, get them out of store them, get them out of there, store them. And then you're going to have this balance. And so you can never have optimal body mass or lean muscle mass tissues when you have constant bombardment of your system with insulin. Ultimately, you could develop insulin resistance, stressing your pancreas out and things like that. So insulin is one of the most important hormones you can focus on balancing. So do not spike it in the morning. Make sure you have your carbs, prioritize them in the evening, and understand that the two of the greatest predictors of longevity, which is a long, healthy life, are calorie restriction and lean muscle tissue. So you're going to have more lean muscle tissue if you eat less and you exercise more, per se. And I'm not talking about going jogging 10 miles or anything like that, or even going crazy with weights. It's just lean body tissues, okay? So insulin is just one hormone. If your insulin's high, it's going to throw off everything else. For example, when men have excess insulin, they tend to get estrogenic. They get feminized. And when women get excess insulin, then they tend to get more androgenic, which is more male hormones. So it's interesting how they play each other. When you're inflamed, your liver is going to be stressed out because your liver is a big repository for glycogen, which is taking blood sugar, turning it into glycogen, and storing it in your liver and or your muscles. So if your liver is stressed out because you're constantly being thrown into inflammation with excess insulin, then you're going to consider your body's going to prioritize stress hormones to try and balance that out versus the building hormones of human growth hormone or balancing your immune system or thyroid hormone, things like that are converted in the liver and things like that. Plus, if you have an inflamed gut, another part of your thyroid hormone is going to be converted in your gut. It's not going to convert there because you're inflamed all over the place. So people always say, I exercise to eat whatever I want. Well, you're never going to exercise your way out of a bad diet. It just doesn't happen. So, and another challenge is we'll get to in a minute, you can't think your way out of a negative pattern or a learned behavior or something like that. You actually have to change your brain and how it works. So I guess that's a great segue into understanding another stress in your body and your brain, which is neuroemotional stresses. So you have three prongs of the triangle. It's called the triad of health. You got structural, biochemical, and neuroemotional. Think of the neuroemotional as the foundation because if you have negative patterns you've picked up from watching mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, or older siblings or something like that, aunts and uncles, and you learn those behaviors and you've been processing them your entire life. It's just like if you hit your knee and your foot goes forward, that's a reflex. If you hit your arm and your arm comes up, one or the other, whichever direction you go, that's going to be a stress. That's going to be a reflex. So these negative patterns you have in your brain that you learned mostly in the first 7 years of your life, but up until 20s or so, even if not beyond that, what you're going to understand is that you're going to be a program of what everybody else is thinking you're doing. And unless you're thinking for yourself in a way that actually transforms your brain instead of just allowing it to run the 95-98% automatic system all day long, it's going to be really challenging. So what you need to do is disrupt those negative patterns. Become self-aware of your patterns. Most of us are unaware of our patterns. And if you understand that your patterns are what determine sort of your attitude, right? They're going to determine your altitude, because your attitude determines your altitude. So how positive you think is going to determine how high you get or how low you stay. That's where Zig gets his thinking from, and his metaphor for that. So when you use something like QNRT or some other tool that helps dig into and rattle the cage, if you will, of those subconscious belief systems that you picked up from mom and dad, you either inherited from them or you learned them watching them and said, okay, this is how I'm supposed to handle stress. This is how I'm supposed to handle relationships. I look back in my life and I'm thinking, the 2008 meltdown, the Great Recession, I'm thinking Ben Bernanke. I'm thinking somebody coming out of the economic womb and learning how to manage an economic system in that time. That's what I used to think back then. I'm thinking, well, I came out of the womb watching people manage relationships in stress, constantly arguing, stress here, stress there, depression here, anger there. It just wasn't a great environment, and I picked up a lot of those negative patterns, and I still, to this day, work to balance those every day, because I know I'm not trying to be perfect, but I'm trying to be the best, evolved version of myself. And I know that Sarah and Sophia, they benefit from that, and everybody else in my life, because when I change, everyone in my life changes. So the less stressed I am, the more relaxed everyone else is, and it goes for your life as well. So when you think about negative patterns, whether it be a belief that nothing good happens to you, like you just don't measure up, you're not good enough, you're unworthy, you're unlovable, whatever your negative pattern is, it doesn't have to rule the rest of your life. When you could become aware of it and understand who was involved, when it happened, what shaped your life, you can understand that it's a major guiding principle in who you are and how you operate, right? So Joe Dispenza talks about you have to create a different personality in order to change your personal reality, because your personality, who you are, is literally determining your personal reality. And I know that for some people, it's going to be hard to take on responsibility for that. Like, well, my personality is not determined by my personality. It absolutely is, because how you think and how you act and how you interact with other people directly determines your personal reality. And if you disagree, that's certainly your prerogative. I've seen it time and time again. I know that every aspect of my life is determined by the quality of my relationships, whether here at the clinic or at home or my family, my extended family, or my friends. And so when you can understand that, and you can understand that I need to do something, I need to change something about my life, start changing something you do on a daily basis. And that could be something as simply changing your hand of what you're using to brush your teeth. It could be putting your pant leg on a different leg, or your short leg on a different leg. Whatever that is, start thinking, start being the observer of your thoughts and the observer of your patterns. If you find yourself reacting strongly in a certain way, observe it and say, well, that's just fascinating that I reacted that way. I wonder who I learned that reaction from. Who did I learn to respond with anger? Who did I learn to respond with defensiveness? I think the general rule is that there's dysfunctional families versus functional families. I know there's a great book called Bradshaw and the Family, if you've ever heard of that. Dr. Bradshaw, I think he was a psychologist or psychiatrist, I forget which one he is. But there's one chapter in there I'd recommend you focus on. I don't remember the number of the chapter, but all the other chapters are focused on dysfunction and codependency and everything like that. And there's one chapter in there that talks about a functional family where each person has the ability to feel, each person has the ability to be their own person, think their own way. Whereas most of us, we grow up in enmeshed families. You don't know where one person ends, the other person stops and starts, okay? You don't know, some people are taught, they're to be seen but not heard. They're not to be seen or heard. They don't question authority. They don't question parents. They don't have a voice, right? All these different patterns that you learn determine your belief system about yourself, and then they end up determining your path in life. And then we maintain people in our lives that determine our bookends, right? It's the old joke that you married your father, you married your mother. You didn't marry your parents. Basically what you did was you got in a relationship with someone who operated in a similar manner that you knew how to navigate, so it felt comfortable. You felt correspondence. You're like, oh, I know how to, this person's great, because in the back of your mind, your subconscious brain's like, I know how to operate here. I know this is exactly what I grew up in, so you just operate there. So you find these people that correspond with that. And then later on in life, you realize, if you dig deep enough, you're like, huh, okay, so now I know who I am, where I come from, what I learned from my parents, and how do I reconcile that with my relationship now? Because as you become self-aware, as you become understanding of your patterns, you're probably going to start questioning, like, what is exactly I'm doing in this relationship? And then you say, okay, well, clearly I value this person for reasons, I love them, and I'm with them for a reason. So then you have to reconcile, like, how do we go from here? How do we have a shared vision of the future and grow together rather than grow apart? That's a big challenge in any marriage and any relationship. So it's a matter of being on the same page, having a shared compelling vision in the future, and then working every day together on fulfilling that vision. But generally speaking, it's best to help understand, like, what are my patterns? What's holding me back, right? Is it somebody else's idea? Is it something I formulated for myself? Generally speaking, that type of stress you didn't formulate for yourself. You've just been operating that way your entire life. So whether you use QNRT or some other method to combat the stresses in your subconscious brain that are running your autonomic nervous system, find something. Dig in, whether it's EMDR, QNRT, whether you want to go talk to somebody about your problems or your challenges, your relationships, whatever that is, I would strongly encourage you to do something, because none of us have enough life to manage our stress. If we're taking our vital energy and focusing on our stress rather than uplifting ourselves and those around us, then I think, in my opinion, and you probably agree with me, is we're losing, okay? So whether you're balancing your hormones with your food, or you're detoxifying your liver to help balance your metabolic stresses, whether you're doing stretches after you work out, whether you're doing foam rolling before you work out, whether you're working with a physical, like a body worker, massage therapist, shiatsu, rolfers, whatever, chiropractors, PTs, whatever it is, work with somebody to help optimize your structural function, but make sure you have a good balance. So that triangle, that metabolic, that structural, and that neuroemotional, because those are the three things that are going to either elevate you every day or they're going to hold you down and anchor you down every day. So, don't focus on managing your stress. Find ways to get rid of it. If you have a toxic or negative relationship, take it head on. Address it directly, because ain't nobody got time for that. There's just too much stress in the world to sit here and say, this is my lot in life. If you don't believe it can get any better for you, it won't. And if you're willing to accept what you're getting, you're going to just get more of what you've been getting. But if you said to yourself, whether it's my structural, my metabolic, my hormones, or my neuroemotional stresses, my relationships, if you're willing to say, this is just what I get and I'm willing to accept it, that's your prerogative, and I support you all the way. I'll encourage you all the way, as will everybody else, because they're getting something out of your relationship with them. But if you're not getting what you want out of your relationships, or your function in your body, or your energy, energy is a huge one for a lot of people. If you don't have a compelling vision of the future and you don't have something that's going to elevate you every day, then ultimately you're just going to stay depressed or anxiety ridden, because nothing's going to get better, and you're going to be depressed about that, or you're going to be anxious about it getting even worse. Okay, so those are the three main areas of your stress in your life. There are easy things you can do. If you have specific questions about your challenges, just send us a direct message on Facebook, or message us on Instagram, or email info@sequoiahealth.com, or call 651-738-7800 or 651-728-1390. That's our cell phone. Text us, whatever you got to do. You don't have to be a participant if you're not already. Just send us a message. We'll do whatever we can to support you from where we are and where you are, and help you support you on your path. That's our mission. Our mission is to end needless suffering for every human being that we can touch the life of, if you will. And that's our purpose. So if you can allow us to serve you, please give us the opportunity. If not, then seek out someone who can help you, whether with your structure, or your biochemical, or your emotional. Okay? That's all we got for this week. Turn off the news, get outside, breathe fresh air, get an IV drip, come in, do some pulse. Obviously, there's a ton of things you can do. So come in for QNRT, come in for structural work, get your hormones right, get some IV vitamins, get hydrated. If you got If you got degenerative joints, we have regenerative medicine here. So I've worked obsessively in order to put together a series of services that can serve you at every level of your life, help you optimize your health, help you live your best life, and that's what we're here for. If you need guidance in your area, if you don't live around the area, then let us know. We'll try to help guide you and find a resource in your area that can help you in that area. And other than that, we'll just keep bringing you as much value as we can. If you have desire for information on something, message us. If you find this beneficial and help people understand kind of the mission you're on and the purpose you're driven to live, then share this with your friends and family. Let us know how we can improve. Let us know how we can serve you better. That's our mission. That's our purpose. So let us know how we can help. All right? Take good care for now. We'll see you on Friday for the Friday live Q&A, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, buddy. Take care.